here's what I really want you to understand. Empathy is not just about being nice to people, but recognizing that our well-being is interconnected. Welcome to the Kindest, Extremist podcast. I'm your host, Shola Richards, aka Brother Teresa. I've spoken to tens of thousands of people all over the world about the importance of kindness. And I am obsessed with how we can bring more kindness into our daily lives and restore balance to a deeply unbalanced world. Every episode, I'll give you 3 practical strategies to create a kinder world, and I'll do it in 30 minutes or less. No fluff, just valuable, actionable content that you can implement in your life immediately after listening to help you actively create a kinder world. There's no time to waste. Let's dive in. What's up, my friend? Welcome to episode 39 of the Kindest Extremist podcast. I'm your host, Shola Richards, aka Brother Teresa. Let me ask you something. When was the last time that you felt truly seen and understood by another human being? I mean, really understood, not just heard, but like you felt that someone got you at your core of your being. If you're struggling to remember, you're not alone. We're living in what I call an empathy recession. I sincerely believe the hard truth that our inability to understand each other is literally tearing apart our world as you're listening to my words. That's what I'm diving into today, because I believe that empathy, real empathy, not the cheesy social media version, but real empathy is the foundation of creating a kinder world. Without it, we're just a bunch of isolated individuals bumping into each other, causing damage and wondering why everything feels so broken. The research is crystal clear on this. Research has shown that empathy is literally like a muscle. The more you work it, the stronger it gets. When empathy increases in a community, everything improves. Crime rates drop, civic engagement rises, mental health outcomes improve, and people report feeling more connected and more fulfilled. But here's the thing no one wants to talk about. Empathy is hard work. It's so much easier to judge than to understand, so much more comfortable to assume than to ask, and it's safer to stay in our echo chambers than to genuinely try to see the world through someone else's eyes. Today, I'm going to give you 3 practical strategies that will strengthen your empathy muscle and help you to become the kind of person who creates connection instead of division. These aren't feel-good platitudes, fam. These are evidence-based practices that will fundamentally change how you relate to other human beings. And look, I get it. You might be thinking, Shola, I'm tapped out. I've got nothing left to give. I can barely handle my own stuff. And you want me to take on other people's emotions too? Well, I get it. I hear you. I really do. But here's what I've learned. After 50 plus years on this planet, empathy isn't about taking on other people's pain. It's about understanding it. And paradoxically, when we actually understand others, we actually feel less burdened, not more, because understanding dissolves the barriers that make human interaction so exhausting in the first place. So if you're ready, let's talk about how to build empathy in a world that seems designed to destroy it. Our first empathy strategy is deceptively simple but incredibly powerful. Practice active listening without the urge to respond immediately. I know what you might be thinking. Active listening? Like, really, Shola? That's your groundbreaking advice? What's next? Telling us to make eye contact? Okay, hold up, because you're not really getting this. When I say active listening, I'm not talking about the corporate workshop silliness where you nod your head and say, I hear you, while mentally composing your grocery list. No, I'm talking about radical form of presence that most of us have never actually experienced or offered. Let me paint a picture of what usually happens in our conversations. Someone starts talking. Within the first 10 seconds, our brain goes to response mode. We're formulating our reply. We're thinking of a story from our own life. And worst of all, crafting our rebuttal to prove why they're wrong. We're not listening. We're performing a weird theater where we take turns waiting to talk. Look, I'm not above this. I'm guilty of this myself. Just last week, my friend was telling about a conflict that he had with his daughter. And halfway through the story, I was already mentally rehearsing my when my daughter was that age stories. It's cringy. I was so focused on my upcoming performance that I completely missed the fact that he wasn't looking for advice. He just needed someone to witness his struggle. Here's what real active listening looks like. When someone starts talking to you, you focus on understanding their perspective rather than formulating your reply. You notice their emotions, their body language, and this is crucial, what they're not saying. But here's where it gets really interesting. When you truly listen without the urge to respond immediately, 3 powerful things happen. First, you start picking up on the emotional subtext. You hear the fear behind the anger, the hurt behind the criticism, the loneliness behind the bravado. You realize that most of what people say isn't actually what they mean. It's the best approximation of what they can manage in the moment. Second, the other person actually feels heard, which is becoming increasingly rare in our world these days. When someone feels really, truly heard, their defensive walls come down, their nervous system calms, and real connection becomes possible. Third, and this is the part that blew my mind when I first experienced it, you stop taking things personally. When you're fully present to someone else's experience, you realize that their reactions, their emotions, their struggles, they're not about you. They're about their own internal world, their own history, their own pain. One of my favorite authors, Dr. Wayne Dyer, said it best. He said, change the way you look at things, and the things that you look at change. Let me give you a concrete example. Years ago, I had a colleague who used to drive me absolutely nuts. Every meeting, she would shoot down ideas, find problems with every solution, and generally just radiate negativity. I'd leave our interactions feeling drained and frustrated. Then I decided to try an experiment. In our next meeting, instead of just mentally arguing with her or planning my counterpoints, I listened, like really, really listened. I noticed the tension in her shoulders, the way her voice got higher when she felt threatened, the pattern of her objections. You know what I realized? She actually wasn't trying to be difficult. This woman was terrified. Every objection came from a place of fear of failure, fear of being blamed if something went wrong, fear of not being good enough. Once I actually saw that, everything changed. I stopped taking her nitpicking personally and started addressing the fear underneath. Our working relationship actually kind of transformed, not because she changed, because I finally understood what was really happening. Here's how you can practice this radical form of listening. First, when someone is talking to you, put down your phone. I mean, completely down, face down, preferably in another room. The mere presence of a phone, even face down, reduces the quality of the conversation. Second, watch their body language as much as you listen to their words. Are their shoulders tense? Are they making eye contact or are they looking away? Are their hands clenched or are they open? The body tells truths the mouth often can't. Third, instead of jumping in with your response when they finish talking, pause, take a breath, and ask a question that shows you're trying to understand deeper. What was that like for you? Or how'd that make you feel? Or what's the hardest part about that for you? Fourth, reflect back what you heard, but not like a therapist where you just repeat their words. Instead, reflect the emotion and meaning. Sounds like you really felt unsupported when that happened. Or, so you're saying that the uncertainty is what's making this so difficult. And here's the master level technique. Notice what they're not saying. If someone's talking about their job but never mentions their boss, that silence might be significant. If they're describing a family gathering but skip over one particular relative, pay attention to that gap. So here's the first kind of strategy of the episode. Choose one conversation each day where you practice pure listening. Set an intention before the conversation starts. For the next few minutes, my only job is to understand this person's experience. Don't offer advice unless explicitly asked. Don't share your similar story. Don't try to fix anything. Just seek to understand. Notice their emotions, their body language, and what they're not saying. When they finish speaking, pause for 3 full seconds before you respond. Then ask a question that deepens your understanding rather than shifting the focus. Start with low-stakes conversations, maybe with a cashier or a colleague talking about their weekend. Work your way up to more challenging conversations with family members or people whose views differ from yours. I promise you, the simple shift from waiting to talk to seeking to understand will transform how deeply you connect with others. And more importantly, it will start to dissolve the invisible walls that keep us isolated from each other. Let's talk about our second empathy strategy, which might be the most powerful mental exercise I've ever encountered, the just like me practice. Despite the just like me exercise being a well-known spiritual practice, you don't need to be spiritual to use it. It's a simple mental exercise that can completely rewire how you see other people, especially the ones who drive you nuts. Here's how it works. Throughout your day, when you encounter someone, especially someone who you find difficult, annoying, or different from you, you mentally note the fundamental similarities that you share. You say to yourself, this person has fears just like me. This person wants to be happy just like me. This person experienced loss just like me. This person is doing their best with what they have just like me. Now, I know some of you are already resisting this. Shola, you don't get it, man. My boss is a narcissistic tyrant. My ex is a manipulative monster. The politician is destroying everything I care about. They're nothing like me. Okay, fam, I hear you. And I'm not asking you to excuse harmful behavior or pretend that everything is the same. But stick with me here because this practice isn't about them. It's about you and your capacity to maintain your humanity in a dehumanizing world. Let me tell you about the moment where I put this practice into action. I was at the DMV because where else would you have a spiritual breakthrough, right? Anyway, I was waiting for like 2 hours, and when I finally got to the window, the clerk told me that I had the wrong form. I needed to fill out a different form and get back in line. I was furious. I could feel the rage bubbling up, ready to explode. This woman was ruining my entire day with her bureaucratic nonsense. But then something in me paused. I looked at her. I really, really looked at her. This woman seemed exhausted. Her eyes were dull, her shoulders were slumped. And I thought, this person probably deals with angry people all day, just like me when I have difficult clients. This person didn't choose to enforce these ridiculous rules, just like me when I have to follow rules that I don't agree with. This person is probably counting on the minutes until they can go home, just like me on my worst days. In that moment, my anger evaporated. I saw her not as an obstacle to my goal, but as a fellow human being stuck in a frustrating system. I said, God, I bet you deal with this all day. This must be exhausting. For real, she looked like she might cry. She said, You have no idea. Thank you for understanding. She then showed me a shortcut in the system that saved me another hour of waiting. That's the power of just like me. It doesn't change how you see others, it changes how others respond to you. The neuroscience behind this is fascinating. When we see someone as fundamentally different from us, our amygdala, the fear center of our brain, it lights up, and we literally perceive them as a threat. But when we recognize similarity, even in small ways, our brain shifts into connection mode. Mirror neurons fire, oxytocin releases, and suddenly we're capable of compassion instead of combat. Here's how to practice just like me in real world situations. When someone cuts you off in traffic, you can say to yourself, this person might be rushing to an emergency just like me when I was racing to the hospital. This person might be distracted by worry just like me when I'm anxious. Or when you're dealing with a difficult customer or colleague, you could say to yourself, this person wants to feel valued just like me. This person fears being dismissed or ignored just like me. Or when seeing someone whose political views oppose yours, you could say to yourself, this person loves their family just like me. This person wants a better future for their children just like me. This person fears losing what matters to them just like me. Or when encountering someone from a different background, you could say, this person has dreams just like me. This person has experienced heartbreak just like me. This person wants to belong just like me. Okay, let me pause this exercise to address the elephant in the room. You might be thinking, but Shola, what about truly terrible people? What about abusers, bigots, people who cause genuine harm? Fair question. And here's my answer. The just like me practice isn't about excusing harmful behavior or staying in dangerous situations. It's about maintaining your own humanity so you can respond effectively instead of reactively. Even the worst people were once children who needed love. Even the cruelest people are often driven by fear or by pain. And to be incredibly clear, recognizing this doesn't mean you accept their behavior. It just means that you understand the roots of it, which actually makes you more effective at creating boundaries, seeking justice, or protecting yourself and others. I once worked with a boss who, to put it mildly, was a nightmare. She was hypercritical, demanding, and seemed to take pleasure in making people cry. For months, I despised her with every fiber of my being. Then I discovered some of the challenges that she was dealing with in her personal life with her kids, and they were considerable challenges. Did this excuse her behavior? Absolutely not. Did I suddenly become okay with how she treated people? No way. But understanding that her cruelty came from her own pain helped me to stop taking it personally. I could see her criticism for what it was, a desperate attempt to feel in control of something. Just like me, when my insecurities caused me to act in a way that I'm not proud of. This understanding made me better at dealing with her. Instead of getting defensive, I could stay calm. Instead of fighting back, I could just set clear boundaries. And eventually, I could leave that job without carrying hatred in my heart for her. So here's the second kind of strategy of the episode. Practice just like me at least 5 times each day for the next week. This is going to be hard, fam, but you can do this. Set reminders on your phone if you need to. When you encounter someone who triggers you, whether it's irritation, anger, judgment, or even just a disconnect, pause and find 3 just like me connections. Start with easy targets. The slow driver in front of you, the chatty cashier when you're in a hurry, the neighbor who plays music too loud. Work your way up to harder challenges like the relative with opposing political views or the colleague who takes credit for your work, the ex who hurt you. Write down what you notice. How does it change your emotional state? Does it affect your interactions? What becomes possible when you see the similarities instead of the differences? Remember, this isn't about being a doormat or a saint. It's about breaking down the artificial barriers we create between ourselves and others. It's about remembering that we're all walking around with invisible wounds, fighting battles that no one can actually see, doing the best we can with the tools that we have. Hey, fellow kindness extremists, it's me, Shola. If you're picking up what I'm putting down, if you're mowing what I'm growing, if you're smelling what I'm stepping in. Okay, I'll stop. If you're enjoying what you're listening to so far, I would love it if you would take a moment to hit the subscribe button and leave a rating and a review. Those incredibly kind acts go so far in helping me to reach as many people as possible who will join the movement to actively create a kinder world. I appreciate you so much, my friend. Okay, let's get back to the episode. All right, now we're getting to my favorite empathy strategy, and it's based on a philosophy I've developed over years of working with people. Most bad behavior is an unskilled expression of an unmet need. Let me say that again because it's revolutionary if you get it. Most bad behavior is an unskilled expression of an unmet need. When someone lashes out, they usually need safety. When someone withdraws, they usually need space or acceptance. When someone controls, they usually need certainty. When someone people pleases, they usually need approval. The behavior might be problematic, but underneath it is a legitimate human need trying to get met in the only way the person knows how. So once you understand this, it actually changes everything. So instead of judging why someone acted a certain way, you become curious. You start thinking to yourself, God, I wonder what they're going through that led to this. Instead of making assumptions, you ask genuine questions. You replace judgment with curiosity, and that curiosity naturally leads to empathy. Let me tell you a story that perfectly illustrates this. A few years ago, I was leading a workshop, and there's one participant, let's call him Bill, who was being absolutely impossible. He interrupted constantly, challenged everything that I said, made sarcastic comments, and was generally making the experience miserable for everyone. My first instinct was to shut him down, using my authority as the facilitator to put him in his place. But you know what? Then I remembered. Bad behavior is usually an unskilled expression of an unmet need. So instead of fighting back, I got curious. During a break, I pulled him aside and said, Hey, Bill, I noticed you have a lot of energy around this topic. I'm curious, what's your experience with being in this kind of training? Y'all, he just unloaded. Turns out his company had forced him to attend after he received multiple complaints from his team. He felt humiliated, defensive, and terrified that he was going to lose his job. His disruption wasn't about me or the content. It was his unskilled way of protecting himself from feeling vulnerable and exposed. So once I understood that, I could work with him differently. I acknowledged his expertise in certain areas, gave him opportunities to contribute constructively, and privately assured him that the workshop was about growth, not about punishment. He transformed from the worst participant to one of the most engaged. Anyone listening to this episode who has facilitated a workshop before probably has a similar story. That's the power of curiosity over judgment. Think about that. Every harsh word, every cruel action, every moment of disconnection, it's all just people trying to desperately get their needs met with whatever limited tools they have. This doesn't mean we excuse harmful behavior. It means we understand it well enough to address the root cause instead of just fighting the symptoms. Here's how this shows up in everyday life. Your teenager who slams doors and says that they hate you, they're probably expressing a need for autonomy or a need for understanding in the only way that their underdeveloped prefrontal cortex knows how. Your partner who gets defensive whenever you bring up issues, they might be expressing a need for acceptance or safety, having learned that vulnerability leads to pain. Your colleague who takes credit for your ideas, they could be expressing a need for recognition or security because they probably feel invisible or threatened. Your parent who guilt trips you constantly, they might be expressing a need for connection or significance using the only strategy they learned from their own parents. When you approach these situations with curiosity instead of judgment, you ask different questions. Instead of, why are you being so difficult? You ask, so what do you need right now? Instead of, what's wrong with you? You ask, hey, what happened to you? Instead of, you always do this, you say, help me understand what's going on for you. The shift is magical. It de-escalates conflict, opens up real dialogue, and creates space for actual problem solving instead of just blame trading. But here's the master level move. Sometimes you need to be curious about your own reactions too. When someone triggers you, ask yourself, what need of mine is not being met here? What am I trying to protect? What am I afraid of? Often our strongest reactions to others are really about our own unmet needs and unhealed wounds. The person who triggers your anger about injustice might be activating your need for fairness. The person who triggers your frustration about incompetence might be threatening your need for efficiency or control. I had this breakthrough with my own teenage daughter. She was going through a phase where everything I said was wrong, stupid, or embarrassing. I found myself getting increasingly angry and critical in response. Then I got curious about my own reaction. What I discovered was that her rejection was triggering my own teenage wounds of not fitting in, of being the weird kid who never quite belonged. Her need for independence was bumping up against my need for connection and significance as her parent. Once I saw that, I could separate my old pain from her current behavior. I could give her the space she needed while also taking care of my own emotional needs in healthier ways. So here's a third kind of strategy of the episode. This week, make curiosity your default response to behavior that you don't understand. When someone asks in a way that confuses, frustrates, or hurts you, pause before reacting and ask yourself 3 questions. 1, What might be going on that I don't know about? 2, what need might they be trying to meet with this behavior? And 3, how can I respond in a way that addresses the need, not just the behavior? Then, if it's safe and appropriate, ask them directly. Use phrases like, I'm curious about what led to that. Can you help me understand? Or, it seems like something's really bothering you. What's going on? Or, I know you seem frustrated. What do you need right now? Or, help me understand your perspective on this. Keep a journal this week of what you discovered. Notice patterns of what triggers you and what needs repeatedly show up, both in others and in yourself. Remember, curiosity is incompatible with judgment. You literally cannot be curious and judgmental at the same time. So when you default to curiosity, you automatically become more empathetic, more understanding, and more capable of creating real, meaningful connection. We've covered 3 powerful empathy strategies today that can transform how you relate to every human being you encounter. First, practice active listening without the urge to respond immediately. When someone's talking to you, focus entirely on understanding their perspective rather than formulating your reply. Notice their emotions, their body language, what they're not saying. Now, this simple shift from waiting to talk to seeking to understand creates profound connection. Second, use the just like me practice throughout your day. When you encounter someone, especially someone you find difficult, mentally note the similarities that you share. This person has fears just like me. This person wants to be happy just like me. This breaks down the barriers that keep us isolated and afraid of each other. Third, make curiosity your default response to behavior you don't understand. Remember that most bad behavior is an unskilled expression of an unmet need. Instead of judging why someone acted a certain way, get curious. I wonder what they're going through that led to this. Replace assumptions with genuine questions and watch empathy flow naturally from understanding. These aren't just feel-good strategies, fam. They're radical acts of resistance in a world that profits from our disconnection. Yeah, I said it. Every time you truly listen to someone, every time you truly recognize their shared humanity, every time you choose curiosity over judgment, you're literally rewiring our collective nervous system towards connection instead of isolation. But here's what I really want you to understand. Empathy is not just about being nice to people, but recognizing that our well-being is interconnected. When you truly understand another person's experience, you realize that their suffering affects you. Their joy uplifts you. Their struggles are your struggles in a different form. I know these practices might feel uncomfortable at first. Our culture has trained us to be judges, not understanders. We've been taught to defend our position, not explore other people's perspectives. We've learned to protect ourselves through distance, not through connection. But that's exactly why this work is so important. Every time you practice these strategies, you're not just changing your own experience, you're modeling a different way of being human for everyone around you. If nothing else, I can promise you this. Your kids are watching how you treat the cashier who made a mistake. Your colleagues are noticing how you respond to criticism. Your neighbors are observing how you handle conflict. And when you lead with empathy, you give others the permission to do the same. And look, I'm not saying any of this is easy. After 51 years on this planet, I still struggle with this stuff daily. Just yesterday, I found myself mentally composing a sarcastic response to someone before they even finished talking. Last week, I completely failed to see any similarity between myself and a guy who was talking loudly on speakerphone in a quiet coffee shop. And don't get me started on how many times I've judged before getting curious. But that's the point. This isn't about perfection. It's about practice. Every time you catch yourself and choose empathy instead of judgment, you get a little stronger, a little kinder, a little bit more connected to the human family. So this week, I challenge you to practice all 3 strategies. Listen like someone's life depends on being heard. And being real, sometimes it actually does. Look for yourself in everyone you meet because you're there if you look close enough. Get curious about the stories behind behavior because everyone has a story that would probably break your heart if you knew it. This is how we heal our divided world. One conversation, one connection, one moment of understanding at a time. This is your host, Shola Richards, aka Brother Teresa, and you now know that kindness can't be weak because you just experienced the strength of the Kindest Extremist podcast. Till next time, my friend, the journey to a kinder world continues. Thank you for listening to the Kindest Extremist podcast. I really hope that you enjoyed this episode, and I have one favor to ask of you. If you could kindly hit the subscribe button, leave a rating and a review, not only would that be incredibly kind, but by doing so, you're actively playing a role in growing this movement and ideally getting us one step closer to creating a kinder world. I hope to see you next week for another episode of the Kindest Extremist podcast. Bye for now.